Okay, let's see. Yes, you can start.
Okay, cool. Yeah, hello everybody. Thanks for joining today's call. I had a quick technical issue, which I guess I now solved with the help of Microsoft. So my name is Peter Gibbels, Chief Technologist in the SAP space of HPE software. I'm working in that space for quite some time of my life, and I like to introduce you today to area of SAP Automation. For this, I've prepared an agenda, and I will stop after every topic. I will first introduce you the broader scope we have, then I drill down into what we call request to fulfill with SAP. And there I talk about our architecture, and I give some examples on how we can automatically install modern business applications powered by SAP and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Software and Converged Infrastructure. Then I go into business API layer, means, we jump onto the application once it's running. And basically then do additional automation. Then I introduced to you a new topic we are working on currently. It's an integration with SAP Landscape Virtualization Management. And then I show you where you find additional material, OO flows, shell scripts, best practices, and other products that I show throughout the presentation. Okay, so let me first go to the first agenda topic, which is just an overview to mention to you that we have developed for the last some years together with customers the IT value chain, IT for IT architecture and infrastructure or implementation, reference implementations. And nowadays, this is developed further, the IT for IT architecture by the Open Group, where Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is a key participant in. So we drive forward now this standard. You see it on the upper right side, and you'll find that also under IT for IT in the Open Group, and also on the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise web pages. And we use that reference architecture in my space to work together with SAP. And today I want to talk about request to fulfill. This is one of the 4 value chains we have in our reference architecture. So we have much more in that ecosystem that I represent today. But today's topic is how can I automate these application landscapes with the help of operation orchestration and the surrounding software architectures. So in that regard, I talk about, how you define and publish, how can you subscribe, fulfill and measure. And I will mainly talk about operation orchestration in the context of our cloud service automation in combination with certain SAP tools. Software Provisioning Manager is one of the tools, Landscape Virtualization Manager and SAP BAPIs, and I come to that in a minute. There are other integrations, as you see here as well. For example, also asset management, which is important for the automation space, but I don't cover that today. In the space around SAP, we are coming actually or the customers are coming from their traditional environments where, there are many SAP installations throughout the world in a classic fashion, but now moving into private cloud, managed cloud, public cloud, or into hybrid scenarios. So we together with SAP are working to address these modern deployments and also the hybrid ways customers are transitioning into. And there, what we do is we work also on, model-based automation, and you see some of our examples very soon. So we have logical models, or you can create logical models of the landscapes you like to provision. Using our topology designer or sequential designer. Today I will show some examples around the sequential designer. And typical use cases are installations, copy, clone, refresh, and changes. And some of them I will show today. Quite important is we also work on standards like the Oasis Tosca standard, which is a topology orchestration specification for cloud applications. And I'm a member of that standard committee as well. We are working on OpenStack, Docker, Cloud Foundry. These are all standards quite popular now in the SAP space as well. The rest I will show you when we now move forward. So the first topic I like to drill down now before I stop also for some questions if you have is the request to fulfill for SAP. So cloud automation architecture. Before I go into any details here, I like to discuss with you or introduce to you, that depending on the layer we are talking about, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service with SAP technical components, we have different, automation topics in mind. So while we are preparing an infrastructure layer, which could be, built on bare metal, and then you deploy automatically an operating system. We could also deploy on using hypervisors. Today I show you a virtual scenario using hypervisors. Here typically on that level, the customers are application developers or IT administrators who would then, based on an automated deployment of the infrastructure as a service layer, they would then do their application, installation manually. If you want to also automatically install this layer, we talk about the platform as a service, and that means, we fully automatically would deploy SAP applications. And here the customer could also be, business application IT teams, enterprise architects who want to have a platform to start working on that one. When you go on the highest level software as a service, you really have everything deployed so that business consumer can maybe just request access to a certain system, or if it's a new investigation, that you want to have a complete lab set up, you would request a lab set up, and you would then we would automatically provision system environments.
Authentication management.
And
the person currently managing it has not done a good job with it. And
there's some background noise, so I just ignore it and hope that somebody recognizes that he's not on mute. On all these layers, it is quite important for us that you basically connect or reconnect with our automation engines to the appropriate tool sets on the SAP side. And on SAP side, and you will see that soon, they have tools like Software Provisioning Manager, SAP installation tools for HANA database lifecycle management. I will show an example of this. We could also deploy automatically virtual appliances that use software appliances that you create on your own, or CAL libraries, that is a cloud appliance library content that SAP would ship, and SAP Landscape Virtualization Manager. This is another tool set that SAP has to operate SAP systems and copy clone them. And then there is a lifecycle management framework in SAP called Solution Manager, and we have different integrations there as well. I don't talk about that today. This goes more into the operation, what we call detect to correct area, but there's a lot of documentation, also best practices available for that. There is a hand up from Hanran. Do you have a question, or is it just the background noise in the background that disturbed you? I guess it was maybe the background noise.
My background noise.
Okay, I hope you can still hear me. Good. So from an architecture point of view, and I know that there are people on the phone, I guess, who do know SAP, others who might not know SAP. Some on the line know operations orchestration. I guess that is the majority in this community, and others already might know our cloud service automation or our Coda product, which basically connects from the DevOps side. So I like to introduce to you here now some architecture pieces of our reference implementation, and mainly around the cloud service automation product that inherits operation orchestration. Very important is that we can expose whatever service is created to a community via catalogs, so to the end consumer. And here basically you will see that soon, some catalog entries that I created. What is also important, as I mentioned, that modern deployments go model-based. You see on the right side a simple model of an application layer that runs on top of an infrastructure layer that we created using the Sequential designer. We can also basically request services that are created in such an environment from the development side. You see on the left side, and it's in your handout, but I don't talk about it today. You see our, request to deploy area, which is more the development and testing space. On the right, you see monitoring. Once you basically automatically provision something, you need to monitor it. So also with that engine, you can automatically attach template-based monitoring. But today I talk about mainly the infrastructure and the application deployment. And to do this, we first, to deploy an application, we first have to basically provision the infrastructure. So the infrastructure can be a service on a public cloud, let's say Amazon or Microsoft public cloud, or can be your own managed private cloud or your managed cloud, or it's, as I said, it's just a server. We have different technologies here, and there's a lot of operations orchestration content available around OO, or also OO with CSA. And then, for example, a product called Server Automation. Once you deploy an operating system with or without virtualization layer, that you then patch it to the appropriate layer. So that's a very important layer to also in the SAP space, to basically allow us to have the right infrastructure deployed that meets the certain SAP application requirements. And once this is done, we start operations orchestration flows for the application deployment. I will soon show you a lot of examples, but you can see here the green models means, okay, part of the sequence design that you see on the upper right is now used to deploy the application. For that area, operation orchestration is a central piece, and a lot of the content that we have developed that is free of charge or available as product extensions are all launched with operation orchestration. And it could be assisted via tools like database middleware automation, network automation. Today you will see plain vanilla OO plugged into CSA, and I will show you then, as mentioned before, how we basically jointly connect to the SAP installation tools, copy clone, and then some BAPI for the change areas. So this is related to the SAP specific content that we have available that you can use as building blocks, that you can modify depending on the needs that you have. And both areas together, these are the areas that I want to show now when I drill down a little further. Before I do this, some typical properties that we need to communicate with the SAP installation tools. This is out of our what we call request to fulfill a document which has currently released 1.3. We are working on a release 2 right now. So we keep moving forward, and later I show you where you can download the document. So here in the document, you see different properties, and these properties need to be handled by operations orchestration runbooks. And you see, for example, one area is an application name. This is important to specify, okay, what do I want to install? So here you see properties like SAP ERP or SAP Supply Chain Management System, SCM, Solution Manager. So these are SAP products, and depending on what you like to deploy and what you have in your library, in your deployment library, you need these basically properties here. Other properties specify database. So on what database you like to deploy. In that version, we talk about Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, MaxDB, whatever. In newer versions, we can also deploy HANA databases, which is SAP's own in-memory database, quite popular. We see a lot of customers now adopting SAP HANA, maybe first with appliances, nowadays also with tailored data center approaches. And so the whole automation space that I'm explaining today is quite important for SAP customers moving forward. Operating systems, for example, can be Linux, Windows. In our best practices for the installation that I show, I talk about Linux because that's what we coded. There are extensions available for Windows, but it's not documented in our best practices. Different SAP flavors. Why that? SAP runs on a Java stack, but also has their own, which they call ABAP language and ABAP stack. So depending on what stack you want to run your application on, you need to select one or the other. Another area that the OO flows need to handle is, installation directories. So we have documented a way to create out of the SAP installation media your deployment folder storage areas. We have examples with other colleagues working on with Nexus, so you can also put your SAP content into any other, deployment mechanism and version control and so on. So another important property on the SAP side is SID. It's a system ID, and you will see all these properties in action very soon. Before I go deeper, any questions so far? Because now I would, in the next step, show you a demonstration on how we install SAP systems fully automatically and how you consume it. But I now stop in case there's any question before I continue. Okay, looks it's not the case yet. Tal, you can still hear me, or? Just a sound check.
You can continue.
Okay, cool. Okay, so in the next step, I now show you operation orchestration in action. So I first want to play the role of somebody who would like to consume a fully automated installation. So I talk about a marketplace, how you set it up, how does it look like from a portal point of view. And I will show how to request a central system. The central system is a complete SAP environment, including the database in one compute instance and on one infrastructure. We can also install a distributed system that is, an SAP system on different compute nodes or virtual machines. I will skip that today to not confuse you, but just that you know that this is possible as well. Then I switch the role in that demonstration. I show you what is important to create offerings. This is typically done by somebody who creates offerings based on the underlying flows and designs that are available. But then I will also show you how you create such a sequence design and then some operation orchestration flows that we have for the installation of SAP systems behind the scene and what they are doing. I do not mention topology designer. This is another very modern way of doing topology designs. that is also aligned to the TOSCA standard. You see it here already. That will be something that we will highlight in one of our next versions of the documentation, how you do similar deployments using topology designs and using, for example, our Helion OpenStack distribution to get on the infrastructure as a service layer connected then. Okay, so let me now go into the demonstration part for this. So you will now see the same I mentioned before, but on our system. So first of all, for those of you who have never seen CSA, Cloud Service Automation, I connect now as a consumer to the marketplace portal. And once I'm in that portal, I have all the services available that I'm allowed to see. So I browse my catalog now, and I'm interested to find services to deploy SAP. So as I want to request a central system, I park now, I found two services. One is provision SAP central system, and one is provision SAP distributed system. As mentioned, I want to show you how we deploy provision a central system. So I now click on this service. Here I have different choices. For example, I can select the application I like to install, and I can only select the applications I'm allowed to see. There might be more in the underlying, flow structure that the engine is able to deploy, but I, as a current consumer here, you see my role on the upper right, or my name in this case, I'm only allowed to deploy a CRM system, ERP, or SRM system. So I now select SRM. Then there's a system ID that I mentioned before, in this case CS1, that you need. It's a unique identifier for the system once it's created. And then you can type in, for example, a subscription name here. I type in now provision SAP Central System. And CS1. So that is just that you find it later again. There could be additional information here. There could be pricing information, but these are all functions that we have out of the box in our Cloud Service Automation software. That has nothing to do with SAP themselves, so that's why I'm not mentioning this. So now basically the service is ordered, and in the background, totally invisible to the consumer now, the deployment is starting. So you see here now, and that is what the consumer will see, deploying services, provisioning SAP Central System CS1, and after some time, the service is online. This time depends on the system. SAP system can be quite heavy. So let's say this can take a couple of minutes for small environments, but it can take a couple of hours for large environments, because what we will do throughout that process is also to install a database and import database content. Once the application environment is installed, we get, or the end user here, the consumer, gets to see different properties. You will see later where they are coming from, but basically these are the ones I explained at the beginning using our documentation. And it's now information that's coming back from the operation orchestration flows. For example, here you see the application is now installed on Linux. Then you see a deployment IP address. That's quite important. It's the IP address where the application runs. There's a management IP address as well. This is because we have a management and the front end network. You can have more, you can have less. That really depends on what you want. Host name CS1 Central. This is auto-created. If you have your own naming conventions, you need to change the flows or scripts here. SAP application SRM. Master password is the password that you need to connect to the system, to the virtual machine, to the operating system, to the SAP front end technology, or to the database. And this is also a randomly generated password that you can also later change. And here you see the software directory that was taken to deploy the software. So now the software is running, means the complete SAP application is running, and I can now take the IP address and the password to basically install or to basically run an SAP front end. So an SAP front end, for those who have never seen this, there are many variants. This is a simple one. SAP also has mobile front ends. This is a normal, simple SAP GUI. See, I put in now the application server name here, instance numbers, system ID. CS1 is our system. And then I started and I basically enter the SAP system here. And then I log in using the password that I got via the portal. We can also send the password, via mail or mobile phone or whatever. This depends on what you need. The next case I like to show you is you now have a running system, but what is if I don't like it anymore? So don't like it means I want to park it because it's maybe a test system. This system is at the moment online. You might have seen before there were some options available. You see here on the already provisioned system, you go back into your service that you consume and you see here additional options. Resume system, suspend system are two options that we build into the best practices here. And I want to suspend my system. That would mean I don't kill it. I just, park it and it will go into a parking mode. What we are doing now in the background, we shut down, we stop the application and we shut down the virtual machine. And once this is done, you see it's at the moment modifying the services. Once this is done and I scroll down to my service, it will tell me power state is now off. And that means service is still available somewhere, but it's switched off. So if I want to resume that again, I go back to my service, I specify resume system, and resume system will basically bring the service back to life. It'll take a while. Action is requested. In the background, there are now specific operation orchestration flows that will connect again to the logic and then basically start up the virtual machine and start up the application. And then after some time, see a power state on. You will see that later in the OO flows that this information is coming from SAP system tools to shell script to operation orchestration flow, from operation orchestration flow back to the CSA Cloud Service Automation engine. There's a hands up, so I stop. Maybe there's a question. Not, it's gone again. You can also ask a question if you like. Okay, it's not. Then I continue. So another important area might be, scaling up. Means I have an existing service. At the beginning, I wanted to have a small environment, but now I would like to add more users to the environment, more developers, for example, and I want to add additional application server. So for this, we build into the best practices here for the installation, add application server, another function that you can apply to an existing service. And it will basically now call operation orchestration flows to add application server instance to that existing central system, which makes it a distributed system actually. And you see when I now scroll down, I have beside the central instance, you see here CS1 central, I have an application server in addition, CS1 app server with appropriate, memory, CPU, that is all, specified in templates, and the power state is on. That means I now increase the power of my system. I can also now add more load to the system. The last is I want to show you how we cancel the subscription. You go basically into your service and you cancel it. And when you cancel, there is a a certain flow that we run to assure that all the resources basically get freed up, and that there's a lot of cleansing in the background to assure, that the system is clean again, that the environment is clean. And that would mean, your service is gone. You see, it's canceling the service now, and once this step is done, the complete service is gone. I mentioned before we can also order and deploy distributed systems, but I will skip this now. I will show you now something else. I would like to switch the role now, and I would like to show you how you create such a service offering that you saw on the consumer portal. So now I go into the system again, but I'm now an administrator. So somebody who is not maybe writing OO flows, but somebody who would like to consume the offerings that are available and make them available to the service consumers that you saw before using a portal. So here, this is another area of our cloud service automation. I go into existing offerings, create a new one, or change an offering. In this case, I show you an offering to provision an SAP Central System. Now I go under Options. And here, if you remember in the catalog, there were some options, for example, for the application name. And here you see the application names that the consumer also saw on the portal. Again, these properties are coming from the underlying operation orchestration logic. And here in this screen, I'm allowed to basically select what options I like to allow for certain user groups or for certain users. And you see here some, you might remember some of the options. These are the database options that we saw before. And then I can basically change here if these options are allowed to be seen or not. So we can also hide options if you don't want to show these options to the consumer side. So then there are, and this is again CSA standard, there are ways to put this catalog now, or these catalog items now into the catalogs of the various groups that you have defined, or regions that consumers are in, so different domains. But this is basically it for the service creation. Now in the next step, I like to show you an example of a sequential design. That's basically now we switch the role again to, you can say a developer. You see we have different designers here. I open the sequential designer. And in the sequential designer, we have different designs. So I now open the central system design. And this now opens the designer. This is the design that you saw in the beginning when I showed some of the slides. You see here the infrastructure layer, then the application layer that I mentioned. On the right side, you see resource bindings. So that means, that defines where the infrastructure is coming from. You see some of the properties again here. So basically in the sequential service design, you see the various properties that are again coming from the underlying operations orchestration side. And I mentioned this is a sequence model. It means, it